Let's go. All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Maker That Money. I am Pooch, known as Repkord. I have a small company called Repkord. We do 3D printing products that make your 3D printing life better. With me, as always, my trusty sidekick, Andrew Mayhall of 3D Gloop fame, building the empire of Sticky. And today we have a really special guest. I'm excited about this. Not just a staple of the community in Slice Engineering, but a longtime friend as well. Dan Burus with Slice Engineering. Dan, welcome. How are you doing today, my friend?
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm pumped. I'm excited. It's a Friday. We got some beautiful weather going on out here in Florida. I just got to go outside for a little bit, and I'm super pumped to talk to you guys.
Yeah, fantastic. So
Great.
you're in Gainesville, Florida, right? So give people
Yeah.
a sense of where that is.
So if you look at the map of Florida and you go halfway up the state, there's this place that you might have heard of called Orlando.
There it is.
And if you just keep drawing a line straight up the state, eventually you'll run into Gainesville. We're in north central Florida. It's about an hour and a half to 2 hours north of Orlando. And up until, I don't know, a few decades ago, there wasn't really much here. Uh,
And
the
then there
University of
was
Florida has been here
Slice.
for a long
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But in the last 20, 30 years, there's been a lot of investment in um, biotech, into new technologies. So the NVIDIA supercomputer that they're building is being built 12 blocks from me.
Ooh.
Uh,
That's
and
cool.
Keep it
the
nice and warm there for a long time.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's
I
gonna
was
be
gonna
in a
say, why?
basement in like a very temperature controlled area. But um, yeah, so it's there's a lot of really cool stuff. There's a actually where worked my first couple jobs was at a college, was in a biotech park just north of here, and it's the world's most award-winning biotechnology incubator, and it's whatever 12 miles from me. So
That's
Very,
awesome.
very
yeah,
cool. And tell the people that may not know, what is Slice Engineering and what do you do?
yeah. So what do we do? So we make components for FDM 3D printers, specifically focused on the tool head part of it, or the print head. So hot ends, heaters, nozzles, sensors, and other accessories that go along with making that part of the printing experience, the actual melting of the plastic part, a better thing,
The danger
faster thing.
bits. Yeah,
The
yeah,
danger
no,
bits, yeah, the
yeah,
hot
yeah.
stuff.
The hot stuff, got the hot stuff. Listen, we're really excited to have you. Now, what's neat is we were talking ahead of the show that Slice was founded in 2018. You said 2018, right? So
2018, yeah.
really, that's the same year I believe Gloop came into existence, is it not?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're all kind of contemporaries in terms of like when our companies were all founded, and obviously we're in very different places now. Now I know, Dan, you've told me, what's the size of your company at this point? You've seen some pretty phenomenal growth.
Yeah. So I think we just hired our 13th person.
Wow.
Um, so that's exciting. Obviously, we're growing.
Very.
Um, yeah. Although it's funny because uh, like there's a company down the road from here that was started similar time as us, but they're like a SaaS company. There are like 100 people. So if you when you talk about growth, it's like
It's all relative,
okay,
right?
it's a relative term. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very relative.
So Dan, on this show, we talk about maker entrepreneur type stuff. We're both passionate about kind of like starting from just humble hobbyist maker beginnings and deciding to make a run at things. And I think you have a lot of that same DNA in you, and you have a co-founder as well.
Yeah.
Are and I don't know if this is too personal for you to share, but it's like, is it just you and your co-founder's name is Chris, right? Is it just the two of
Mhm.
you in terms of the ownership, or do you guys have venture fund? Did you have investment from outside, or is this a bootstrap for you as well?
Yeah. So we've got a third partner as well.
Mm.
Yeah, he's kind of a silent partner, and he joined the team in like 2019, and he really works in. He does help with some of the day-to-day operations, but he's really more in an advisory role.
Okay.
And yeah, so there's three of us, and yeah, we've bootstrapped, and we've used some debt financing, but been mostly bootstrapped
Sure. And we've
from the
we've
get-go.
we've talked on past episodes too about the merits of,
Mhm.
say, seeking investment versus bootstrapping and stuff, and some of the challenges that that come
Oh,
with
yeah.
that. So, but I just wanted to share that just so people's kind of had some context of where everybody's coming from, size of company and stuff like that. We
Yeah.
we love talking all things business and stuff out here. Listen, I want to say, for those of you that are with us live, we record this every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. And we've got a ton of awesome people in the chat. Greetings to everybody.
Mhm.
If you have questions for us today, you are welcome to either I put a nice little call-in link above there, so you're more
Nice.
than welcome to call in and participate in the conversation, because this is always designed to be a conversation first and foremost. But if you're not able to call in and you have a question or a comment for us, you're welcome to leave that in the chat as well. You like, Andrew, did you see I put a nice little link there? I realized too, it's on the Repkord site, but we got the MTM hotline now, which for some reason to me sounds like a metro, like a bus. You get bus stop information.
It sounds like a train.
Yeah,
Right?
but it's actually the call-in link. So if you want to call in and do that, you're welcome to anytime. We will try to keep an eye on the phones and loop you in as we are able. The topic of conversation though today, guys, is patents versus open source versus maybe trade secrets, talking about some intellectual property, some strategies for business. I really, really wanted to have Dan on this one because he is a student of both. They have done both. They have products that are both open source and patented. So I couldn't think of anybody in my immediate circle that had probably more intimate knowledge of actually taking a product to market and using different strategies around that. I know there's been a lot of stuff in the news recently, specifically around intellectual property, and I want to kind of get everybody's opinions on that as well. So I'd like to actually start with that if we can. In the news, there were two main things in the news this last week and this current week that I think are relevant to the conversation. The first being the I don't know if it's fair to call it a debacle, but the whole Honda episode where they requested that all of their anything with Honda branding that mentioned Honda in it on printables.com, that's the Prusa warehouse of 3D printed parts and stuff like that, be removed from the site. So you guys have both seen that and are familiar with what happened there, right? So for those that haven't, basically Prusa, the owner of printables.com, got a cease and desist letter saying that, hey, if anybody's posted anything to your guys' website that has Honda, whether it's a fuel cap or our logo emblem or anything, you need to take it down. And Prusa being an upstanding company, they complied. There's of course a lot of debate online on whether or not they should have had to and all this stuff, but probably just taking the easier path of like, we're not going to fight with this. And there's been some interesting articles out about it around like why that might be, and the potential for confusion that if somebody downloads something that says Honda, that it may imply that it was endorsed or created by Honda in the first place. So there's obviously some brand protection there, but this also feels a lot like old guard mentality of companies, large companies saying we protect the brand at all costs. This reminds me of the episodes we've seen in the past with Lego and Disney, where they're just like, that's ours. You don't get to talk about it and stuff like that. I want to start, Dan, you're familiar with this. What are your feelings, obviously, as having a brand and having IP and stuff out there around this strategy of just like, no, we don't want anybody associating with our brand like this?
That's a good question. It's definitely it is a nuanced problem
for sure,
because obviously if there's a potential for confusion, uh, let's you mentioned a printable, let's say it's a fuel cap, right? And it's got a Honda logo on it, and you put that on your Civic, and then it breaks. Or say
Mhm.
you put that on your Civic, and then you sell it to another guy,
Right.
right? Like that could be a problem. Like that could be a safety issue. You're talking about that whole system is pressurized, right?
Mhm.
There could be a whole slew of issues around that. Now, if you're printing a Honda badge, like that's technically Honda's property, and they invented the
Sure.
logo. And now, if you're doing it for your own vehicle, I feel like that's a little bit of a different thing than if you are trying to sell it commercially. And that's kind of where we draw a line internally. Is if somebody is trying to make a profit off of our brand, that's our brand. Like we invented the brand, we
Right.
came up with the brand, we put all the effort behind the brand,
Right.
and we want to maintain the brand a certain way. And so it's not somebody else's right. It's like somebody all of a sudden taking your first name, and your last name, and it's almost like identity theft, right? It's like
Look at me.
corporate
I am
identity
Dan
theft.
Burus now. Yeah.
Right,
No.
exactly.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so it's that's a difficult thing, and you want to make sure that people are having the right experience with your brand and not having sort of a counterfeit experience with your brand, so to speak. So
Absolutely.
it's a tough thing. It's a
A-
tough thing.
Absolutely, it is. It's tough. Andrew, give me your thoughts on this. Just there's obviously a distinction between that which is legal and that's which
Mhm.
is ethical and that which is maybe sound business practice and
Yeah.
stuff like that. What are your feelings here?
Well, so I mean, this to me seems very traditional in that this is a company that is trying to protect its intellectual property and it's trying to enforce its status or stance on its intellectual property moving forward. I've filed several patents. I've got several patents granted to me.
Hmm.
I've never gone down the open source route, but I've also done the trade secret.
Sure.
The thing with patents and IP is it's tricky, copyright especially. You can actually lose your enforcement of an intellectual property, stance if you choose to not enforce it.
Right.
So if you have a patent on something and someone is using it for a commercial application and you selectively choose to not enforce that patent or have a license agreement with them, you can actually lose your ability to enforce the patents globally, right? Or a large,
Mm.
basically against a larger scale. Same thing goes with copyright. This is actually why Apple, I don't know if you remember this back in the, probably it was like 2014, 2015. Apple lost a landmark case for a copyright claim with their logo in iPhone. I think it was in like Brazil or something in South America, because they selectively chose to not enforce it up to a point where it got large enough and it was basically slapped down and they said you can't claim this. So here with Honda, I think that this is just a blanketed thing where they're just trying to cover all bases, saying, hey, if you're using our logo or our likeness in any way,
Right.
obviously you can't do it. And yes, they probably should have selected which specific models violated these claims. Blanket statement saying anything that includes the word Honda, I think is wrong.
And
But I think there is
there's advertising
some,
opportunity too, right? Like
yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
it's going back to your question, Pooch. You mentioned kind of legal, ethical, and best business
Hmm.
practice.
Sure.
It's like something that we've looked at is like if somebody is making a 3D printable file with the Slice logo on it or the Slice name on it, we're like, awesome, go do that.
Yeah.
Please
You want a brand for us?
don't.
Fantastic.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Now I don't want you selling that and saying that you're Slice, but if you want to print it for your own use, you want to give it to your friends, like that's fine.
Hmm.
We just again, that's going back to the commercialization part of it is where we
Yep.
we really draw the line internally,
Yeah.
and I think that's for us that's an ethical line as well.
Sure. Sure. I'd often heard, and this goes kind of to what Andrew was saying, that, a patent only does you any good if you can really afford to defend it. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that. I mean, like you'd said, if you don't defend it, you can potentially just lose your right. It can be null and void. But obviously that's a really expensive process, right? Like not every, especially when you're getting started,
Mhm.
somebody that's, like bringing a huge lawsuit and trying to mount a defense for violation of a patent. Sounds like a lot of talk about a major time and financial suck, right?
Mhm.
Uh, now, have both of you had any experience in that? Dan, had you gone down, any legal cease and desist type stuff for any
So
of the things
we've
you have
not
patented?
pursued litigation at all
Well, that's
against
good.
anybody, and that's so. What's funny is that there are rumors on the internet that we're suing all kinds of people.
Yeah,
Slice has never been involved in a lawsuit ever, and all
we're putting that to
like
rest. We're
well,
putting the rumors to rest right now.
yeah, putting the rumors
Nice.
to rest, and I hopefully will never be involved in a lawsuit. Knock on wood, because yeah, it's no fun for anybody. Uh,
Mhm.
now I'm not saying if there was an egregious issue that we wouldn't pursue that path, but we want to avoid that at all costs, right? We want to look at how do we have communication, how do we
Sure.
open lines of communication and find a mutually agreeable solution that maybe we settle with arbitration as opposed to with the
Mhm.
lawsuit. Not only is it expensive, but it's a massive waste of time. And I know several business owners that have been forced to go down that path essentially, or either have been sued, been on the receiving end, or have had to sue. And yeah, I mean, it dominates your life for a period of
Mhm.
time, and it's not a pleasant thing for your mind to be dominated by. Rather
No,
be thinking about how can I serve my customers better.
absolutely.
So,
It can be a major distraction, obviously, and stuff
yeah.
too. So, and maybe does that dictate? So to kind of dive into the specifics of what Slice has, you have an open source hot end in the Copperhead, very popular
Mhm.
Copperhead hot end. And you also have your original Mosquito line that is patented as I understand it, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's
And
correct.
and so when you're kind of making decisions on whether or not you're gonna hold it close to the vest or put it out for the world to see, are those considerations in mind? Like how do you reconcile those competing desires?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a great question. We really look at like for I'll just use the mosquito in Copperhead because this is the examples that we have. So
Sure.
mosquito we patented, but we also released under a Creative Commons license. So it's a non-commercial Creative Commons license. So if you want to take one and remix for your own personal use, you're
Hmm.
welcome to do that. And that's been the case since 2018. When we immediately when we launched our website posted CAD files for the mosquito. Now they're
Right.
not the full CAD, right? Because we didn't want to just enable everybody to go in China specifically to go and rebuild this
Yeah.
and basically destroy our business. So the decision there was we'd seen several people that had launched something that was new and innovative get undercut by Chinese before they could even get off the ground, and you essentially um, you lose your baby,
Yeah.
and that's no fun for anybody. And then that company that has this innovative energy doesn't come out with anything new, so
Right.
it doesn't
Mhm.
longer term it doesn't serve the community.
Right.
So
Right.
we knew we had to protect our initial product. And then once we'd gotten a little bit of momentum, we said, okay, now we can take some of that core technology, we can apply it to an open source product, and this is where we can open up as much as we can uh, to provide free stuff to the community. And you've seen bimetallic heat breaks, and which came out with the Copperhead, already used on the Mosquito, but in terms of on in an open source design, came out on the Copperhead. I mean,
Yeah.
it's everywhere now. Almost everybody uses a bimetallic heat break.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
We
and
invented that.
yeah, and I mean that has to be so rewarding and awesome to see, that's out there. But it's interesting too. To your point, you don't want to stifle innovation, so finding that right balance. I really think that you guys exist in a really great space. I love the kind of the 1-2 punch, and we've seen others out there kind of doing similar things where it's like, yes, we will open source this stuff out here, but with a kind of the asterisk, that it is
Hmm.
non-commercial and stuff like that. Like we don't want we understand that we come from these, innovative roots. We want to encourage that type of engagement in the community, and I think the community sees that and recognizes that. And of course, you've always got bad actors that you have to deal with. But
Right.
the fear, I can at least speak for me personally, and I have a very, I feel like, silly product compared to some of the technical stuff that these two do. But for like Repbox and stuff like that, I've been asked a lot of times, like, hey, is this an open source product? Can I get the files? Can I cut my own? Can I make my own?
Hmm.
And for the box specifically, we don't just like give everything out. Now, if I have a customer request something like, hey, I want to do a customization, like, can I get
Hmm.
a thing in the back pan? I'm happy. I'm more than happy if people are, asking and wanting to, innovate, or they're making that request. My biggest fear is exactly what Dan brought up, which is like, I don't want to just give a blueprint for somebody out there to just completely copy what I do and undercut,
Yeah.
because obviously I am in a very expensive labor market. Like it would not be hard for anybody in other countries with much, less overhead and stuff to do what I do cheaper, and so
Hmm.
that's a concern, right? So how do you could recognize and give back to the community? Because I always say, like, I'm built on the shoulders of giants. Like I wouldn't be able to have this had I not been able to leverage the tool sets, the 3D printers that other people have developed and shared with the world. And so it's like I
Hmm.
want to be able to give back. And so we do pick some of the products like the rep rack and stuff like that, where I'll put it out there and just say, hey, go to town. We'll put our
Right.
branding on it, and I'll say, I appreciate it if you leave it on there, even though you're not
Hmm.
required to via open source, because it helps bring eyes.
Right.
Also, we always say, if you don't want to make your own because you don't have the time or you feel like it's not worth your time, here's the link, and come buy from us. And we've had a ton of
Yeah.
support that way, and I find that to work really well. I think that's a cool strategy. So it's like give a little, keep a little. I don't know.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts, guys?
You mentioned um, removing the branding. Why not distribute under an attribution license where if somebody is using your model, they have to give attribution. Are you
So
doing that?
as I understand it, and I've spent a little bit of time looking into it, but if I want to allow remixing, right? Like if I
Hmm.
Hmm.
want people to be able to develop, and so for example, the rep rack that we released that's been just really popular, and it's literally just some brackets with EMT tubing as support shelving, and EMT is just the reason I chose it is because it's absolutely ubiquitous here. You can get it
Right. It's everywhere.
everywhere. It really, I think, a good bang for your buck in terms of cheap and strong.
Hmm.
And but it's not as common in, say, like Europe. And so they were like,
Hmm.
well, we actually have a standard by which we can get these wooden dowels more easily, or this different pipe easily. And I'm like, that's great. Here's the file, and if I want them to be able to remix it, uh, my understanding is that if I want to allow remixing culture, I can't say, well, you can remix, but you have to keep the brand on there. It's all or nothing based on the current Creative Commons standards. Somebody in the chat,
Interesting.
if you know different, correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious to know that as well because,
yeah,
yeah, with the remix, I don't see that attribution. I guess maybe is different than branding as well. So maybe
yeah.
we're
Hmm.
talking about
Yeah.
two different things. So
So
maybe
there
they
is
could put
still
their own brand, but
there is still
give you attribution.
attribution,
Yeah.
yeah, and I
Hmm.
think you do have to still share back. There's still terms of that
Mhm.
and stuff to it, but again, I
Yeah.
haven't spent a lot of time really digging in on that. I think a lot of other people may know more about that. Um, Andrew, I mean,
Yeah.
what decisions are you consider? You mentioned that you guys you do trade secret type stuff, like
Hmm.
Coca-Cola is famous
Yep.
for trade
It-
secret, right? They're like, we're
yep.
just not sharing the recipe. That's a great way
Yeah.
to keep it private, right? How does that weigh into the conversation here?
Absolutely. So, well, you actually mentioned something about, your rep boxes not giving the blueprint out, right?
Yeah,
And for someone to copy. And that's actually what a patent is, right? A patent is a detailed blueprint of what it is that you've created. Down to how you make it, what makes it special, all of the details about it. And you disclose that. And as a part of that disclosure process, you get essentially a guaranteed monopoly, if you will, over the course of set number of years, depending on where
sure.
it's filed. Um, And the reason why the patents came about was to prevent essentially from people being innovative and then owning it and never sharing that innovation with the world, right? To build off of and continue development. Essentially, it was trying to stifle the trade secrets, right?
Mhm.
Now, there are cases in which trade secrets make a lot of sense. Specifically, when it comes down to, say, an adhesive, chemistry and physics don't change, right? It- like they're universal laws, and you could
Says you.
patent essentially, well, you
Doesn't mean
could
we're not trying.
patent
Yeah.
you absolutely can patent an adhesive formula, and there have been plenty of companies to go and do that. But what you find is as a part of that disclosure process, you're telling them how you make this adhesive, all of the chemicals involved, the reaction processes, everything.
Yeah.
And at the end of your monopoly period, anyone can take that and now make it commercially, right? You have no more protections. So if someone else wants to say, hey, we're going to scale this up, right? They absolutely can. And it doesn't matter whether or not you were the original inventor. So with a trade secret, when things don't change, like chemistry and physics don't change, it makes a lot of sense to say, well, we're not going to release this information. We're not going to release all of the steps of how we make it. Sure, you could absolutely take our formula and send it to a lab, reverse engineer it, get the end compounds. But
Right.
what you're missing is all of the steps in between to get to said compounds, right? And there are benefits to trade secrets, but yeah, it's like, well, it's very closed off, right? No one knows what's in it. And like, say for instance, we go belly up or something happens,
Hmm.
where does our innovation go? Most of the time it's just going to go away, right? Unless you were able to build a long lasting company that's able to continue carrying it forward into the future.
Sure.
um we evaluated patents early on, and again, we just came to this determination that it's like it doesn't make sense for us, because sure, while we could patent the formula, and we can, hey, this is the really cool way in which we actually synthesize the polymers. um at the end of the day, if we can't defend it, right, against a giant company that says, well, you're actually patenting something that we've invented long ago that we didn't release, you have to do cease and desist, because that's still a potential option.
Hmm.
It gets really hairy, then it doesn't make sense for us to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it
So
makes sense.
I know that was a long-winded answer, but
No, I mean, these are all considerations that I think you have to take, and it's one of these things where it's like there is no right or wrong answer. There's different paths to take, and there's different potential pitfalls along the way.
Mhm.
I want to switch gears to kind of this week's hot topic. Talking about IP theft, and specifically, Chris Perillo in the chat had a fantastic quote. He said, "Ethics are what we do when no one else is looking." Right, and so
It's true.
it's
Yep.
it's almost sad to me that it has to be spelled out that way, or at least said that way, because you would like to believe that we all have some underlying ethics that we all agree to and want to abide by, but it's the transparency oftentimes, and it is the fact that we are doing things publicly that seems to be maybe a more common motivator. Well, I don't know if it's more common, but it's a motivator for business and stuff. And so what I'm alluding to is there was big drama in social media in the news this week about Creality Cloud and their IP theft of a lot of designers. And now we're getting into more like trademark stuff and whatnot. These aren't necessarily copyrights. I'm
Copyright.
sorry.
Still falls under the same
Right,
umbrella, if you
but
will.
it's
Yeah, it's still intellectual
it's
property.
still IP,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
It's still intellectual property. I think that most of us can agree that if you are not the creator of it and you're taking this and profiting from it another way, that is wrong. Where it's getting a little bit frustrating is that Creality Cloud is a they're an environment where these things can be posted. So it's not like they're specifically going and taking these things and putting them up as their own. They're enabling this behavior, though. And so
Mhm.
what responsibility do companies have to enforce IP? I know we have our expectations of what we want to see kind of with our cultural understandings here in the United States. I think it's different in different parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, what are your feelings around this whole debacle?
Oh man, this is a tough one too because they are
Only tough
creating
questions today.
essentially a marketplace, right?
Yeah.
And it's something I guess. Quick side note here:
We'll go with you.
I think there's a general misunderstanding about people think intellectual property is only patents, but intellectual property includes patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. Trade secrets, of course, are not public. Patents, trademarks, and copyrights are public. Um, but all of them have value. They add value to the company, right? Because you own these assets, but they also create value for your customers. That's why people buy stuff. Is because it's associated with a brand, which is a trademark, or it has some design, which could be a copyright or a patent. I mean, that is what brings value to a product or to an idea, and so all of those things are important, and
Certainly.
companies and people should be enforcing their IP. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
idea theft is still theft.
Yep.
So that's my
Straight up.
little spiel there.
Mm.
But to get to the actual issue at hand, um, marketplaces are in a tough spot because they enable new things to happen, which is cool, right?
Sure.
Uh, but they also do have a level of responsibility, and it makes me think back to if I was to then talking about 1,000 years ago, right? You go and opened a market, and now you've got vendors coming in your market. You would be responsible for the behavior that was happening in that market
Right.
if you weren't abiding by the law. So then the question is, all right, what legal authority, right? They are a Chinese company with primarily, I think 80 something percent of their revenue comes from Europe and the United States. So
Right.
which set of laws do you abide by? And I think my opinion is that you should be abiding by the law in the countries in which you operate. But I'm not a
Yeah.
judge, so
Yeah. Well, and laws be. I mean, I would say the laws of business are the first things that seem to drive a lot of these, Chinese companies a lot of the time. And where I feel like they're really missing the boat here. I don't know the legal structure of like how Creality Cloud specifically relates to Creality the company and stuff, but obviously it's got Creality in the name, so it's a subsidiary. It's something. And this reflects so unbelievably poorly on the brand. It is at the very least in their best interest to enforce this so that it does not damage their reputation and their sale. And given the way that whoever's operating their social media and stuff has been responding to some of these things, I'm like, if I was running Creality, I'd be like that needs to stop right now, and we need to take this seriously because they're going to see major decline in sales of people like, well, I'm not dealing with this. I think there's going to be some pretty severe backlash if they don't take this seriously. What do you think, Andrew?
Well, yeah. So, I'll say again, I'm not an attorney or a lawyer, or
None
don't
of us
take
are.
legal
not
advice
legal
from me,
advice.
right?
Yeah.
Only bird law. Yeah.
I will say that this is very similar. There's a lot of parallels here to essentially, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Pirate Bay, but
That's a name I have not heard in many years.
this is essentially, the Pirate Bay was supposed to be a marketplace, a free digital marketplace to get, copyrighted materials, for free, right?
Torrenting. Yeah,
Exactly.
man.
Now, while they might have good intentions, right, to offer a marketplace, that gives back to, the creators that upload, the Creality is still responsible for what is hosted on their site. They are responsible for illicit content as well as copyrighted materials being hosted. So if a creator makes a file and they sell it through their Patreon or whatever, and if it has a license to it, right, they are responsible to abiding by that license.
Sure.
Just was saying, oh well, we'll remove it, does not remove their responsibility at all. They can actually still be, so if these content creators were to start banding together and you get enough of them, you absolutely could likely file a class action lawsuit against a company. Doesn't matter where they are. If they operate here in the United States and it's mainly here, there's a good chance that again there could be claims against this whole company because of the copyrighted material that they're willingly and openly hosting without removing.
Yeah.
So
with great
you know.
power comes great responsibility. Well, and I don't know if it's actually great power, but you're absolutely right. Like as a baseline, I'm like, if you're gonna start something like this, like you need to take this seriously. And it's not just about removing when there's a complaint. Like your position should always be, to protect, because like obviously, like people are not going to use it if people aren't going to, download from. Is this a problem that's going to sort itself out if they continue down this road because just nobody will give credence to it?
I don't think so. I mean,
Really?
look at the Pirate Bay.
Yep.
Pirate
Bay is a good example.
Like it doesn't matter. Again, at the end of the day, people are going to go and get what they want, right? Even if they understand that the content creators that are making these files have licenses and want you to basically buy them, if they have an option to get it for free, while you and I and Dan here might be like, okay, well, yeah, we're going to go support that content creator, we're going to go buy an official copy, there are still many of other people that won't do it. And then
Millions.
also there's also millions of other people, as Dan says, that maybe not even will knowingly actually do this. They're just like, oh, hey, this is cool, I'm going to go ahead and download it. With the influence that Creality has, again, the argument I think can be made in such a way that they are actually skewing a lot of these laws and regulations to and distributing this to people that don't know any better, that don't know they're actually violating a copyright law. Because again, owning a digital model, right, that was released under a copyright with a license that says you had to pay for it, just owning that makes you liable as a person. So if you go to Creality and download a paid model for free, you, the person, are now liable and can be sued by the original content creator.
Man,
so
this goes back to Chris's quote at the top of Perillo when he was saying, about ethics. Like it's hard for this kind of thing not to make you cynical when it's like, we all talk a good game, but at the end of the day, if there's a way to stay anonymous and get stuff for free, like, people are going to do it. And it's disheartening, right? I mean, you're absolutely right. Pirate Bay, we've seen it with torrenting. We've seen it, with obviously the music industry and, all this stuff historically. And honestly, it's also what allows companies like Creality to exist. We talk a good game, and this is a whole nother ball of wax. But when people are like made in the USA, right? Everybody's like, yeah, I want to support local, and I want to support American innovation and all that stuff. But at the end of the day,
looking.
I'm gonna buy that cheap, money. It's all money talks, right? And I hate that, right? And I'm not saying like that's speaking in generalities. There are people that'll hold firm, and I respect that. But it's tough to compete with the fact that it always comes down to dollars for a lot of people, and that they're willing to compromise a good amount of ethics for them too. So I don't know what to do with that. We don't need to go down that depressing route, I suppose, right now.
Yeah. If people get too emotionally attached to the concept, we have sometimes people buy a clone of our products and then reach out to us for support. Which of course part of the sales price that's built into
cost of support is high.
Product that we sell is the cost of hiring people to support the product after the sale.
Yep.
And so, not only then are you sort of taking money from the original creator during the initial purchase, but now you are asking for a double dip with the support request. And of course we can't support non-real product, counterfeit
Yeah.
clone versions of our products.
Yeah.
But there is a um,
Well, now to be clear,
there's an emotional argument there afterwards. Yeah.
these people don't know that they have a counterfeit, or they
Oh, some of them
do,
do.
and
Yeah,
they're
some of them
still
do.
looking. So, like,
Yeah.
I mean, it just never ceases to amaze me, like the gall, the nerve of some of these people. They're like, yeah, and I come across this too. I don't know if you know, but like, I sell upgrade kits for CR30, right? And so, for a while, we were selling the actual CR30 printer as well, but I would get. People would see that we work with these a lot, and I would get requests like from people that didn't buy from us, and then be like, hey, you know about the CR30? Like, they'd email my support line on Repkord and ask like, can you help me figure out how to make this thing work? And I'm a nice guy, so it's like I want to help people, but I'm like, that's going down a road that's not going to be good if it gets out that I do that. And it's not even my product to support. So, it's one thing if you're asking like, hey, I'm having a hard time figuring out how to install this kit that I bought from you. That I'm more than happy to help with. But going to a company that you didn't buy from originally and then asking them to spend time with you to like help train you on it or whatever. What is wrong with you? Like, that is not a thing, guys. Like, do not do that.
We get it too. People asking how do what's
how
the
do I
best
use my
glue
super
for these
glue?
things?
What is that?
Yeah.
I think part of it is people don't, we all own businesses, and so you understand that there's a cost to paying this person's salary, and it's, I get sometimes a negative reaction from people like, oh, all you care about is the money. Well, no, I care about the people.
Yeah.
But the people need money to eat, like I need money to eat and pay my mortgage and feed my kid, and so do the people on my team. And so, yeah, I mean, but I think people that have not had that sort of experience where they are paying somebody else's mortgage, it's difficult to, like, you haven't put yourself in that person's shoes, so you're not in the same headspace. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
You don't see it as unethical potentially.
And I think a lot of times people just don't. It doesn't even occur to them. Like,
they just don't think about it.
They're in a different headspace. I don't know. I don't want to normalize. I don't want to allow it because I don't think that it's. If people stop and think like, "Hey, am I asking you to work for free? Am I, like, hey, I need this support. Like, I know I didn't pay you. Come on, man. It's just." We had this conversation before, Andrew. It's like they're reaching out to Pooch the maker, not Pooch the business owner, and they don't. And I know that I don't draw a very clear line, right? And there's definitely the me that interacts in forums out there, and that I participate. I realize I've gotten help from others, and I want to help others as well. But don't come to my place of business and do that. Like, that doesn't seem quite as appropriate. If I choose to be on the, Facebook group for it or whatever, I think that that's a completely different thing. Different thing. Yeah. So, we can leave that for now. There's a lot of interesting stuff out there. I want to draw in a question from Adam at Powerbuilt 3D. He asked, what are some of the potential hey, how's it going, buddy?
Yeah.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. What are some of the potential solutions to something like the Creality drama? Is it strict licensing? Do we require a valid email to download anything so that you can track people down? What ideas do you guys have for fixing the problem? That's a tough one. We only take tough questions here, Dan, if you haven't noticed that.
Yeah. I would say that I think the bigger issue isn't really tracking down who's, like, I don't think the problem is people downloading the models, right? That are uploaded illicitly, right? And I'm using illicitly uploaded as, copyright material being able to be freely downloaded. I think the issue is allowing that copyrighted material to be hosted to begin with, right?
Yeah.
And Creality should not allow any any anonymous uploads of any copyrighted material, regardless, right? So I mean, I think the issue is the solution at the same time,
Mm,
right? Remove the ability to upload anonymously. That's what I'm gathering, right? Is has been happening
mhm.
is these copyrighted materials have been uploaded anonymously, and there's no way to say, okay, well, how did it get up there, right? And then also, again, just don't host copyrighted materials to begin with. If there is a copyrighted claim against it, Creality needs to respond in a very timely manner, saying, okay, hey, we need to take this down because it is damaging to the person who had or holds the original copyright,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I agree with part of what you're saying, Andrew, in that Creality definitely has a responsibility to uh, make sure that the items that the digital files that they're hosting
Hmm.
uh, conform to the law. Period.
Yeah,
Right. I would where I would disagree with you is that I think there is still fault with the let's say consumer, the person that downloads the file,
sure.
because I mean, you guys all we all grew up in the days when everybody was like torrenting music down to their
oh
Sure.
yeah,
iPod, right?
Sure.
And
oh
you
yeah,
Yep.
had 400 gigabyte iPod, and you
Yep.
plug it into the aux
Hmm.
port in your
or a
car, right?
Zune, yeah.
Or a
Yep.
Zune. Yeah, not the Zune.
Hey, those are worth
uh,
good money now. They're worth good money now.
I've heard they are, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so anyhow, though, I had a buddy that was very prolific at this, and I'm ashamed to say that I take part in some of these activities in my younger, more naive days.
Oh, shame,
But
Dan. Like we're one to talk.
yeah,
Yeah.
but he got busted. I mean,
Oh,
he got
Hmm.
busted for downloading because he just was doing that much volume, and he was
wow.
had his
Wow.
own little distribution network going, and
Hmm.
he ended up having to pay some fines, and um, the volume of stuff that he moved in order to raise a flag for the FBI had to be so enormous that I cannot imagine the monetary damage that was
Oh my
done to
gosh. Yeah.
not
Oh
just
yeah.
big record labels, say, but also individual small musicians that are just trying to get started. And not that the um, morality of doing damage to a large record label is different than the than doing damage
Hmm.
to a small artist. The morality is the same. It's still wrong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the effect is larger to the individual artist than to the big record label. So
Sure, and I
yeah.
I completely agree with you, Dan. Like I agree that the big issue still here as well is the people being able, downloading it and knowing it. But I
Mhm.
think that there's also something to be said for people that are buying these Creality machines that don't know any
I
better,
don't know. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like I want to believe in the good nature of people that if hey, they realize that this model is copyrighted and should not be available for free, that they would obviously not do it and stop downloading it or delete it, or go to the original creator and give them what they're rightfully owed. But
Mhm.
it's hard to control that.
It
um
is hard.
It it's
It's very
it's
hard.
it's nuts to me that we've been absolutely down this road before and that here we are
mhm.
many, 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 many years later, and we're still having these same conversations and problems with just different intellectual property. And it seems like, is this just going to
Well,
be
now
a
it's physical
problem?
things, right?
It
Yeah.
feels
Now
more
it is.
tangible now. It feels more
Yeah, now it's more
tangible, right?
tangible
Mhm.
because you can now take a digital file and turn it into something tangible.
Hmm.
Whereas with
Mhm.
music or a video or something, it was not. It's not tangible. It's something you watch on a screen.
Right.
Still same problem, right? But it's a new aspect of the problem, and I'm excited for some of the ways that maybe blockchain technology uh,
Sure.
can help enable these things. Because one of the beautiful things about the internet is that it has given everyone a platform and everyone a voice, and it has given the opportunity to a small guy starting out in his garage, like all three of us,
Mhm. Yep.
were, to actually build something of value. It was much more difficult to do that 30, 40, 50
Mhm.
years ago.
Absolutely.
Well, 30, we're actually approaching anyway.
Yeah.
50 years ago, let's say.
Sure.
uh, yeah, so 50 years ago it was more difficult to do that. The internet has enabled the ease of distribution of content and materials in a way that is just truly incredible. But we're going to have to find a way to um, make it not so easy to also
Balance.
smash the little guy
Right.
online.
Right. It's that double-edged sword. I mean, it
Hmm.
allows us to reach markets that we couldn't reach. I mean,
Yeah.
you can achieve a scale so rapidly by going global, and whereas before, when you were confined to being a brick and mortar or like a physical
Yep.
location, like you were physically
Hmm.
limited in a completely different way. So that which is one of its greatest gifts to us as business people is also on the flip side a challenge.
Yeah.
It's really good points, guys. Like, and this is this is something that I imagine we're going to continue to. We're like living it right now, so it's
Yeah.
going to be really interesting to see in 50 years time. And I understand that things have come and gone with not necessarily gone, but there's been all kinds of interesting attempts at what is it, DCMA rights, establishing that. Like a lot of times it just takes
Hmm.
the legislation and the laws time to catch up with these new problems that haven't
Yeah.
existed historically.
Yep.
So yeah, well, man. So I think one more question I've got for you, Dan, on the kind of the patent and the open source and stuff. My opinion historically has been, as a small business and stuff, that I would rather spend my time being first to market with stuff, innovating, like quickly get it out there and establishing a reputation around something, uh, and not following that distraction of potentially having to enforce patents, submit takedown requests, because that will just drain you. Like when you think about how
Hmm.
how challenging that can be. Maybe it's not as bad for you as, say, somebody like a designer here, that it's like you're just constantly trying to plug the holes in the
Yeah.
dike because your files are showing up everywhere. You have like a tangible product, so it's a little bit different, but it's still there's a good amount of work that has to go into like being aware. How do we deal with people that are bad actors and stuff like that?
Hmm.
What are your feelings around that? Because like you said, you've kind of done both. You've put some stuff up out there, but you've also done protect. Like, is it worth the time? Is it worth the
Yeah.
money? Is it worth the effort?
Yeah. So I guess first comment is going to be about the plugging the holes in the dike. It's definitely even though it's a physical product, is very easy, relatively speaking, to put up a listing on a marketplace. Like it takes you 5 minutes,
Sure. Yep.
So uh, it is not that much more difficult to create a listing for a hardware product than it is to create a page for a digital file download.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it is a very very similar problem. Um, in terms of the value, uh, I would say that I would point to, for example, E3D and Bontech. Um, they both started out without intellectual property, and well, excuse me, without patents. They certainly have their own intellectual property, but they started
Hmm.
without patents,
Hmm.
and now they both have patents pending. And the reason for that switch, and we can point to even more examples. Ultimaker,
Hmm.
Hmm.
famously started totally open source,
Right.
and then as they grew and they realized they needed to build this longer term brand, you just can't have fake ultimakers catching on fire and burning
Yep.
people's houses down. You can't take on that liability, right? So that was part of their reasoning. But another part of the reasoning is that if you really want to build something longer lasting, you need to have protection to fall back on. You need a defensive wall, so to speak. And I think the fact that E3D and Bontech have both made this uh, pretty radical switch in their approach goes to show you that it is worthwhile. Even though there is expense involved, the expense isn't all at once. It's
Yeah.
like you have certain filing fees at the beginning. You have certain fees for, you know, if you do it right, you should be doing a prior art, what's called a prior art search. So making sure that
Hmm.
your stuff isn't already invented. You should be doing what's called a freedom to operate, which is and a patentability analysis, which is basically
Mm-hmm.
figuring out is what I've invented patentable and does it infringe on other people's patents?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so once you've done all those things, there's expense to that. But once you've done all those things and you've filed, then it takes years for the costs to bear out. And as a micro entity, which is if you're an individual inventor, you would file as a micro entity. The fees are relatively small. I think the for the U.S. Patent Office, it's $135 last time I checked if you're a micro
Yep.
entity to file a patent.
Yep.
So you can spread out the costs, and the costs of enforcement don't all hit at once either. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely a stick your fingers in the dike kind of thing, but
Yeah.
thankfully not all the holes pop out at once. So, uh,
Huh.
yeah,
Well, and I think it's something that as you grow, hopefully you have more resources that you can allocate.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
hopefully something that you can try to keep up with. But I'm good. I'm glad to hear that it's worth it.
Yeah,
Obviously, you've IP is valuable, guys. I think
yeah,
that it
it's
comes down to
valuable.
that disconnect that a lot of people have that I've had this rant before. Like the value of a product is far greater than the sum of its material cost. Like, how many times have you guys had an email from somebody like, how can you justify charging this much? Because
Mm-hmm.
like I can get aluminum billet for X and da 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 da
Right.
da,
Yep.
and I can machine it, way cheaper. And you're like, man, you don't get it at all, do you? Like, there's so
Yep.
much more. Yeah, you're not paying for this one. You're paying for the like hundreds that came before it, and the R&D
Yeah.
and the people and the the ones that got lost in shipping, and all the costs
Mm-hmm.
that get associated with that. But it's such a problem I think in the maker mentality, because people are just looking at something and go, I could make that. And
Yeah.
that's also why I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people that are trying to get a start in business as a maker fail, because there is a huge difference in making one of something and 1,000 of something, or
Oh
10,000, as we
yes.
can
Yes.
all attest, right? But
Yes.
that is not a very obvious thing, I think, to the person that's in their garage still making their own stuff.
So we talked to a lot of uh, sort of nascent 3D printer manufacturers, guys that want to start a 3D printer company.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to do that, I applaud you. Please do it. It's awesome.
Wouldn't
It's
touch it with a 10,000-foot pole, man.
uh, but if somebody in the chat or whatever, they want to do it, that's great.
Yep.
But usually the pitch that I hear during the first conversation is, I've looked at so and so's name established manufacturer bill of materials. I figured out how much it costs them to make this. It's 50% of what they're selling it for.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that for less.
Your math doesn't
And
track, homie.
your math doesn't track, because 50% margin is like, you're as a
Minimum.
manufacturer, you're just scraping by,
Oh
right?
God,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're just
Uh,
scraping by.
yeah.
Because
Mm-hmm.
overhead, rent, electricity, server space, all of it costs money. Yeah.
It absolutely does. And the other challenge is that scaling product is boring to most makers too. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I want to move on to the next project. And so when
Right.
when they're constantly feeding that hit they get from, oh, I built a Voron. I got a kit printer and I did that, and like, that was awesome. Great. Now do that 10,000 more times and deal with customer service and all that stuff. Well, this sucks. I don't want to do this. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the danger and the beauty of our industry to some extent, that it's like they see, like, I can make my own 3D printer from scratch. I can customize it. I can, yeah, of course you can. And that's fun and fantastic, but that is just a completely different game. Like you're saying, I don't want to discourage people that want to be innovative and come up with new product. There's absolutely opportunity out there. But as people in the chat are saying, like, taking it to scale and doing it day in and day out, and really driving home that point of differentiation, like, is it a unique sales yeah, maybe that's cool, but are people going to be willing to pay that $500 premium, $1,000 premium, whatever it is. And if you don't have sales and marketing expertise and all of the other things that go into like, you know, even getting the message out there and letting people know that you even exist, right? Like that's that's another digression for another day, guys. One, and I know we're closing in on our hour, and we got to respect Dan's time here because he's got a new product launch today, and there's other stuff going on, and it's Friday.
Oh boy,
and, you know, he wants
Copperhead
to get
boots
back to his stuff.
came out at noon. So if you want a Copperhead boot,
Sweet.
you want a boot for your
I
Copperhead,
just got the
go get it.
email. New product drop. Nice
Yeah.
looking email. Well done. I'm sure he has a great marketing team helping him with this stuff. So good. Congrats on the new product
Trevin,
drop.
if you guys are, if anybody's
Shout
at
out.
Rapid, Trevin will be there. He wrote the
Shout
email.
out,
Awesome.
Shout out Trevin. Awesome. You got time for one more thing, Dan?
Let's do it.
Okay. So one more thing that I wanted to talk about that is it came from a Pooch rant earlier in the week that I dropped on Twitter. It is a term that is so unbelievably speaking of marketing, co-opted by marketers in the 3D printing world, probably in the manufacturing world, and in a lot of different places. The term industrial. Okay, we have an industrial 3D printer, industrial grade. You know, we see it with other things too, military grade, and not to be confused with mil spec, which is a totally
Which is
different thing.
That is a real thing.
No,
Yeah.
it is a real thing, and I'm not trying to. But the term industrial, I think that, you know, marketers love it because it's like, okay, I want to draw this distinction. Like this is the thing that everybody wants to have, that it's like, it's built super tough and it's going to last forever. And, you know, I think that means completely different things than just, you know, the parts that are, let's just say a 3D printer right now are made of. But I really hate seeing it used out there, and then I look at it and I'm like, that's not industrial at all, at least not my understanding of it. So my first question to you is, when you hear the term industrial as being an industry, as kind of having an understanding of manufacturing and the tool sets that are used, what does industrial mean to you, and what are your expectations of something that is supposedly industrial?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the thing that actually pops into my mind is a phenomenal marketing campaign that Ford did years ago, and it was the Built Ford Tough, and it like dropped this big steel plate onto a piece of concrete and like cracked it.
I need to drop
That was
steel.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, and they stamped it. It was like stamped, dropped, crack. You know, it was really well done.
Yeah.
So that's what I think of when I think of industrial. I literally have that mental picture. When we use the term industrial, we're typically talking about a market segment. So some of our customers are in industry in the sense that they're in the medical industry, or they're aerospace, or they're government. So that's typically where we use it. We do have a product that we use the term industrial in, and that product is specifically designed for that customer base. Doesn't mean that other people can't use it. It's a great product. It's a heater.
It's not a silicone boot. It's a heater.
It is not a silicone boot.
Yeah.
That is not. I would not call that an industrial product.
It's not an industrial boot. Yeah.
But it's not steel-toed. If it was steel-toed,
you should make a steel-toed boot. That'd be pretty funny. I like it.
So actually, kind of speaking of that, we have right now we call it an insulator, but it goes around our Magnum Plus hot end, which that I would consider to be an industrial tool.
Okay.
So that is a hot end that is built for many. I mean, we're talking about thousands of hours of use on one of the first applications of it was actually on a robot arm at a university in Germany.
Okay.
So that's an industrial use. The whole setup was, once they commercialize, will be sold to automotive companies. Which is an industrial use. So
okay, so
I
like
think
used in manufacturing then would be criteria.
That's great.
Okay,
Awesome.
Okay,
You're in marketing.
I dabble.
You dabble.
Yeah. So used in industry. Obviously, you brought up reliability. Maybe like mean time between failures. That's a metric that a lot of times.
Absolutely.
So high mean time between failure. Okay, so obviously we think reliability. Andrew, what are you thinking of when you hear industrial?
Yeah. My thought is immediately mean time between failures, MTBF, right?
Hmm.
And that would be an incredibly high, MTBF. My previous startup, we developed server platforms for specific use cases in big industry data center
Right.
appliances.
Right.
And, there are, like each industry has requirements or specifications that are I guess standards you want to hold yourself to. So yeah, when I hear the term industry, it's really working towards a standard or a classification of some sort. Maybe it's used in manufacturing, maybe it's used in big enterprise solutions, data centers, that sort of stuff. But I think the term hardened kind of goes along with industry, right? Or industrial. It's not just, again, a consumer product that you're going to go to Walmart and you're going to buy, right?
Right. Right.
you know.
Right. Um, I think there's a couple. So I think reliability is one of the reasons that marketers tend to co-opt it the most. So they want to imply
Mhm.
that there's a level of reliability. A lot of times you look at some of these things that are quoted as industrial grade, and they're using the same componentry that we see. Maybe they use some
Mhm.
ball screws instead of standard, what is it, Acme rod or whatever.
Mhm.
So maybe some higher grade componentry, but in my opinion, if I'm in manufacturing, if I'm robot manufacturing stuff like that, it goes far beyond just like the actual thing. It's about what are the support structures in place that when this thing breaks, like is it installed? Like, did it cost me this much? Do I need to have somebody come out here and fix it for me? Yeah, maybe I'm going to pay
Mhm.
for it, but like those solutions, I think to think back to the industry you're talking about, the server, the data world, like we
Mhm.
see these SLA agreements and stuff like that are in place to
Mhm.
support the thing because it all comes down to return on investment when you're a company and all
Yep.
that stuff. Like, yes, I want it to be reliable, I want it to not break on me, but I also need to know that I can be up and running again as quickly as possible once
Should something
should
happen.
something
Yeah.
happen, because
Yep.
nothing is completely bulletproof, right? It's like having
Yep.
some structure in place. And then I think there's a degree of compliance and some stuff that like safety considerations, like we think about emergency stops and light towers on industrial grade equipment that you don't really care about
Mhm.
when you're running in your house, but maybe absolutely necessary for having operator safety and stuff like that. And so obviously there's a big distinction and stuff, but I don't know. Am I just overreacting, or do you feel like that term seems to be really overused or not accurately used?
There's so many terms that are overly used.
Yeah,
Come on now.
yeah,
I
yeah.
I would say we've certainly, in my opinion, it is overused specifically in the 3D printing space because we have a lot of uh, you've got sort of the two original big companies, right? 3D Systems and Stratasys, which
Strat. Yep.
Mhm.
were building and still build industrial systems.
Right.
Yep.
Their customers are the Boeings and BMWs of the world. And then you've got this other side of sort of the hobbyist driven side of the business.
Right.
And now we've got this professional business where side of the business where people are moving from the hobby or space into the pro side, or they're just launching newly into 3D printing.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And so there's a desire there for more reliability,
Right.
but without the price point of, say, $250,000 machine.
Yep.
So
Sure.
it
So like
I
a
think that's what's driving it.
prosumer
It's the
space.
prosumer market. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and the
prosumer
need
market.
to draw some kind of distinction, right? To
Hmm.
justify that, if we want to do it's kind of a sad state of affairs, but like look at there aren't really that many, American 3D printing manufacturers that are in a prosumer level, or certainly not in a hobbyist level anymore. Yes, there's Stratasys and all that stuff. And I think a lot of people look at those machines and they go, well, they still have FDM machines that are effectively doing a lot of the same stuff. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to it than just like I've got
Yep.
my hot end, I've got my steppers or my motion system and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that we all think that, oh, I want that all the tech that's in that $250,000 machine, but I want to be able to have it in my garage or something like that. When, you know, you probably don't need a lot of that stuff, and it's overkill. And you know, yes, some of that, but a lot of that cost, like we were saying too, isn't necessarily just in that hardware. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's in the support structures and the, you know, the IP you're paying for and all that stuff.
Yep.
So, you know, it's interesting, but that's again, another topic we could go on for quite some time on. Dan, we're gonna let you go, buddy, because I know you got your Friday to get back to. I want to thank you for your time with us today, fielding the questions. I want to thank everybody that's been in the live chat. If you're listening back on the podcast, it's been a fun conversation, fantastic conversation. Feel free to tweet at us. I put everybody's tag in here if you want to kind of keep the conversation going, have some ideas about future conversation. Obviously, if you have any questions or comments for Slice, you can find them. I've got their website on there if you want to support their products and stuff. Good, made in the USA company. Please do so. I've used their stuff. It is fantastic. We love Slice. We love all of our awesome community people. And Dan, I hear that people, if they're going to any of the upcoming trade shows, like where can they see you, give you a high five in person?
Yeah, so we're going to be at Rapid and at Murph in at least the next 2 shows. So we'll be sponsoring and exhibiting at both of those. I will be there personally. And if you would like a free pass to Rapid, hit us up.
Nice. Look at that. See, don't act like you guys don't get some value from, you know, being with us here. You know, free passes to Rapid. Come on.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, listen, man, thank you so much. Andrew, thank you as always for being just such a great cornerstone of the conversation. And this has been a lot of fun. Thanks guys for tuning in. That's a wrap on another Maker That Money. We will catch you guys next Friday. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. Talk to you soon. Ta-ta.